Hello, everybody. Welcome back to This Weird House. I am, as always, Nick Boddick, and today we have a guest who I am honestly kind of frightened to talk to because I have a feeling she is going to point out all the flaws and inconsistencies in what I claim to be my vast knowledge of film. So I'm here with Miss Gemma Files. How are you, Gemma?
I'm really good. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I say us, it's just me. I don't know how many people listen to this. Like I was saying just a few minutes ago, I do this for myself. So whether it's one listener or a million, we,
hmm
we all appreciate it. Um, so just a real kind of broad question to start off for you. Come to how did you come to the horror genre? Where did your passion for horror begin?
Okay, so what I usually say is that much like Yukio Mishima, my heart's leaning has always been to night and blood and death. Even when I was very young, uh, I was always drawn to the darker aspects of things. So, um, I began wanting to write, I guess, science fiction because, Star Wars and all that. I was
Naturally.
born in 1968. And then I realized that I am not that great at science.
I mean,
So,
neither is George Lucas, to
well,
be
that's true.
fair.
It's like, so space opera, fantasy, dark fantasy, Stephen King came out, and horror,
That
pretty
is a
much.
pretty clear, yeah,
Yeah,
progression there.
yeah, it's a pretty obvious drift. And I remember saying in another interview that in hindsight, I feel like horror always seemed the most realistic genre to me, because to some degree, when you're neurodiverse, you feel like you're living in a horror universe. It's like there's something wrong with me. I don't know what's wrong with me, but everybody around me knows it. And yeah, you become very drawn to the idea of monstrousness, whether that's a negative or a positive, I suppose.
That's
Um,
really interesting. I've never heard that connection made before, but that does make sense from an
yeah.
outside perspective, at
Oh,
least.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
It was I mean, again, this is like over an entire lifetime. When my son was diagnosed, and he was diagnosed when he was about 2.5. Um, it coincided with a period of, well, depression. I mean, I was depressed for about a year, and I think a lot of people have that journey when they realize that their child is on the autism spectrum. Um, but part of, because you have this sort of idea of what the child that you have is going to be like, that they're going to be on the default, and then you realize, oh no, actually it's going to be very different. Um,
Yeah.
and part of that journey becomes, what did I do wrong? Um, and you realize, or at least I realized, the way that a lot of mothers of kids with autism later realize is that no, the only thing that happened was a person on the spectrum married another person probably on the spectrum, and they had a kid who was very obviously on the spectrum.
Yeah.
So in a strange way, because that coincided with me starting to publish novels, um, because I basically wrote a book of tongues the year after my son was diagnosed. Um, it became That realization became very entangled with my career as a horror author, as an overt horror author. It's not like I hadn't been publishing horror before, but it was all short stories, and it became a very different kind of thing. So yeah, it's been this journey of self discovery entangled with a creative journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, the I mean, it kind of, I mean, that makes sense to me,
Mm.
because I feel, and this isn't like a thought that I
Yeah,
have. It's I feel pretty common, and like horror is very clear, very closely connected to, in a lot of ways, like various mental health things. Which, not to say
yeah.
autism is a mental health thing, but you know
Well,
what I mean. Like
I
it's
mean, it sort of is in that neurodiversity is simply about the way that your brain works. But then there are a lot of mental health issues that come out of that because your brain works differently from quote, quote, the default.
okay. Yeah,
And
that's
so there are,
a good
you
way.
know,
Yeah, good
uh,
point.
with women in particular, it's about masking. It's about hiding yourself, learning how to, it's like I remember having a conversation with my mother at one point um, about the fact that I had made a decision that if I wanted to talk about something that I liked, I really should only say three things about it and then stop. Because otherwise,
Don't want to come off as too overbearing about it.
yeah, no, really, it's very much that. It's like, I mean, I remember when I was younger and I used to just sort of like, oh, and let me tell you about this, and also this, and also this, and also
Hmm.
this, and much later, when I realized that there was a bunch of jargon attached to this, I could say, this is one of my hyperfixations. So let me tell you.
Yeah.
But I don't want to, take up all of your time for like an hour.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, incidentally, my fiance actually works with kids on the spectrum,
Oh,
and
cool.
two of the four or five kids, however many kids she's worked with, have hit huge fans of horror. And I mean, obviously, they're very young children, so they're not like,
Yeah.
they're not watching Saw and Hostel and stuff, but like
Yeah.
they're like very like middle grade
No,
horror stuff. But
absolutely.
she's
But
like, I can totally see them when they're older and they keep this love, this passion that they have for horror, because like they will write, like, I mean, they're learning to read and
hmm
write and stuff, but all they want to do is read the scary book, all they want to do is try to write a scary story, draw a scary picture, and I'm just like,
well,
it's so cool.
yeah. And also, I think part of being interested in horror is because when things scare you, you want to master them. You want to explore why they scare you.
Yeah.
And I certainly know that it's sort of like the first time that I ever heard Nine Inch Nails. I was walking home from a security shift really late at night. I had my Walkman on. That's how long ago this was, um, and and I was listening to the radio on my Walkman. That's how long ago this was, and Down in It came on, and I was just like, "This is the most terrifying song that I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Why does it make me feel this way? What is this? I must pursue it."
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there's that Cronenbergian metaphor of you have to go all
Oh
the way
yeah.
through it to the end, and
Yes.
Videodrome, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that's horror for me. It's like, why does this make me feel the way that it does, and how can I do that to somebody else?
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I just had like a revelation, almost kind
Mm,
of like at the start of one. So like I started writing back in 2015-ish. Or
hmm
well, no, sorry, I know it was 2015. It was after I had a years long addiction to heroin, and
Oh,
9 years clean as of last week
that's
Thursday.
great.
So
That's
yeah.
wonderful.
Um, and so I've never really kind of connected those two things as far as like why it was horror I was drawn to when because I started writing because my counselor at the time was like, you need to find a hobby or you're just going to be in your own head
Yes.
all the time and drive
Yeah.
yourself crazier. And yeah, that's when I started writing horror. Oh, that's when I started reading horror a lot, and then from there started writing. So yeah, there's got to be a connection there.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
no,
don't mean to like
absolutely.
bounce this
No,
off of
no,
you.
no. I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that in a lot of ways, writing horror is very therapeutic. I mean, yeah, there can be creepy fetishistic elements to it, right?
Right.
Occasionally you trip across somebody and you're like, you are very into this,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But as a person who has certainly has many creepy fetishistic elements to my, it's like,
Yep.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Can
but
relate.
yeah, exactly, and I think there's a wonderful kind of, shamelessness, and to simply acknowledging this is where I am interested in going.
Yeah.
Does this mean that I'm going to stick my thumbs in somebody's eyes in reality? No, obviously not.
Yeah.
Much like Madonna's Dick in the Brain, right?
Yes.
You can,
Yes.
yeah,
Ah, yeah. Is
yeah.
that a Reservoir Dogs reference?
No, no. Around the time that she did the Sex album, she said,
Okay.
I something along the lines of, I have a dick in my brain.
Oh,
That's like,
okay.
so along the lines of like, I can think of whatever I want, and I can, fantasize about whatever I want,
Yeah.
whether I act on it or whether I don't.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were for a second making a Reservoir Dogs reference. The
Oh my
beginning
God,
conversation,
yes,
they're
yeah.
like Madonna,
Dick,
like
dick,
a
dick, dick,
virgin.
dick, dick,
Dick, dick,
dick.
dick, 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 dick. That is something I didn't expect to be saying during this interview. Was dick, 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 dick. So we're off to a great start.
Yeah, thank you.
um. So to kind of I bounce off, go on tangents all the
Yeah,
time here.
go for
So
it.
and I
Go for it.
welcome that. So you find this. Can you remember like the first horror story you read, horror book you read, horror movie you saw that really made an impact on you?
Yes. Yeah, I can remember some of the first horror things that I came across, and actually some of the first elements of horror were fairy tales.
Mm,
Um,
yes.
yeah, so of the grimmer variety, obviously. One of my favorite initial horror stories in that vein is a grim fairy tale that a lot of people don't know about called Mrs. Gertrude.
I am not familiar with that
Yeah,
one.
it's very short. Um, Once there was a girl who would never do what her parents told her to, and would always do what her parents did not tell her to. What can be done with such children? Anyways, one day she said, I've heard a lot about Mrs. Gertrude. I think I'm going to go and visit her. And her parents said, don't do that. But she did it. Anyways, so she goes to visit Mrs. Gertrude, who lives alone in a cabin in the woods. And as she's going towards Mrs. Gertrude's place, she sees a man dressed all in green, and then a man dressed all in red, and then a man dressed all in black, and becomes progressively frightened. She runs to Mrs. Gertrude's place, knocks on the door. Mrs. Gertrude lets her in, and she she says, "Oh, child, you seem very frightened. Why?" Well, first I saw a man who was dressed all in green. Oh yes, that was my farmer. And then I saw a man who was dressed all in red. Oh yes, that was my butcher. And then I saw a man who was dressed all in black. Oh yes, that was my hunter. Um, but so I what? Why did you come to see me? And she's like, well, I've heard many strange tales of you. She's like, yes, that's true. Um, Come a little closer to the fire. And, oh, Mrs. Gertrude, why? Why do you have a crown of flames on your head? Ah, well, now you've seen the witch in her true ornament. But thank you for coming because I've been waiting for you for a long time. You're really going to brighten up the place for me. And then she turned her into a block of wood and threw her on the fire. And she said, there now, isn't that nice and bright?
That like it always like it always just amazes me that these things were told to children.
Mm-hmm.
Like uh,
I mean, it's
and
pretty overt, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's like,
it's about as clear as day. Like
yes. But I also love the mystery of it. That phrase, now you've seen the witch in her true ornament.
hmm
I I've used that more than once in my stuff. But also I just it has the air of a ritual. It has a real folk horror kind of slant to it, where
Yeah,
you're like,
definitely.
what the fuck is this about?
Yeah.
Why are you telling me the story in this particular way? I mean, I understand you telling me the story to keep me from doing what you don't want me to do, but why in this particular way?
Right.
In one way, Mother Gertrude is a lot like Baba Yaga. She's a lot like Frau Holle, which is another German version of Baba Yaga. Um,
Oh, okay.
the old lady who lives alone in a cabin in the woods and, can help you, but can also harm you. She might eat you if she doesn't like you, if you're not polite enough.
Yeah.
But she might also give you, a gift. I will give you for gift, such and such,
Yeah,
you know.
man. If faced with that like dilemma there, like, oh, there's a chance you could get something cool or you
Mhm.
could die.
Yeah.
I like knowing myself, I'd be like, all right, it's worth the risk.
Yeah, exactly.
This gift might be pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And why would you not want to go to the hut with chicken legs? Come on.
Exactly.
Where everything talks to you.
Yeah.
You walk in and the cat's like, "Oh man, you shouldn't come."
I'd be like, can you please go communicate with my cats and tell them what to do?
Exactly.
You bilingual cat, I'm assuming.
That's right. Speaks
Oh
German,
man.
human, and cat.
That's the dream. That's what you want in a pet.
I agree.
Um,
So yeah, I think from the very beginning, I was always attracted to, there's another fairy tale called The Boy Who Wanted to Have the Shivers. There's, which is about a guy who, it's funny. He's either represented as being really dumb or possibly on the spectrum. um, but he's basically like, people keep talking about the shivers. I've never had that. What's that about? It's like he's just not afraid of anything. So he
hmm.
becomes, and again, this is a grim fairy tale. So he gets into situations which are more and more scary.
Mm.
And eventually he's like playing nine pins with a skeleton that's taking itself apart and, making nine pins out of its own bones and bowling with its skull and, stuff like that. And he's just like, yeah, okay. Meanwhile, eventually he gets married. Sort of, like most fools in these stories, he stumbles into getting married to a highborn lady or a princess, and she gets so sick of him continually going, you know, why can't I ever have the shivers? That she goes out and she catches a whole bunch of fish in a net and dumps them on him while he's in bed. And the fish are all like slimy and flopping and cold, and he's like, "Oh, wife, I have the shivers! Oh, I finally have the shivers! Yay!" And again, I think that this is sort of a story about wanting to understand what makes you afraid and why it makes you afraid.
For
So,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Kid stories are so crazy
oh
back
my,
in the day.
oh my God, yes. And in terms of film, the funny part is that I in I am just engorged with horror film at this point in my life, and a lot of the time I feel like, I'm just going, shove it in my eyes, But when I was a kid, anything could scare the crap out of me. I
Oh yeah.
remember being terrified of the end of Wuthering Heights and we're talking about like the 1930s, 40s version
Oh, okay.
with Laurence Olivier,
Yeah.
because at the end they're both ghosts. You're like, they're dead and they're ghosts. And one day I'm going to be dead. Okay, so the first thing that I remember being absolutely obsessed with was actually Phantom of the Paradise.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that one.
Brian De Palma.
Oh,
It
okay.
is a it's a rock musical version of Phantom of the Opera.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, and Paul Williams, you know,
Yeah,
little tiny Paul Williams, plays a guy who has sold his soul to the devil to become a rock producer,
as one does.
as one does, and he tricks the Phantom, who is a very talented composer, but not so great a singer, um, into selling his soul so that he will produce his rock cantata, which is about the
Huh.
story of Faust.
Yeah.
And he, yeah, and he's like, you know, well, as long as you hire this one particular singer who I'm in love with. And Paul Williams is totally fucking him over all the time. It's amazing. You absolutely have to see this film,
Yeah.
because it was a total flop when it came out. And there were like literally two places where it did really well, and one was Winnipeg, Canada, and the other one where Guy Madden, one of our craziest Canadian filmmakers, became a huge fan of it. But also, the other one was Mexico City, where Paul Williams talks about how he showed up to a Phantom of the Paradise um, like convention, basically, and this fat 13-year-old came up to him and he was like, "This is the best movie in the world," and that was Guillermo del Toro.
What?
Yeah,
That's so
I
cool.
know.
That sounds like the kind of movie Guillermo del Toro would like.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna have Phantom of the Paradise.
Phantom of the Paradise.
I'm going to type this down real quick. All right, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, and and again, it's like this combination of the way the music makes you feel, and I mean, it's like there's a sequence which is kind of based on, yeah, okay, there's a band in the movie that goes through it's always the same band, and it goes through like several different phases. At the beginning it's like a shanana type 50s throwback band,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a faux Beach Boys kind of carburetors, man. That's what life is all about, you know, band. And then finally, it metamorphoses into this kind of shock rock band, which is sort of like proto Crampsy and proto metal and goth. And
Huh.
and I remember sitting there and I was like, I don't know, 11, I think, watching this. Can you hear that?
I could for a
Yeah,
second.
sorry about that.
It's all good.
Somebody is drilling in the other apartment. Okay,
Oh,
so I
perfect.
remember sitting there watching this, and I was like, yeah, 11, watching this on TV, and being just riveted. This
Yeah.
was the darkest shit that I had ever seen in my life. Toronto, and yeah, and just going, oh my god, they're they're ripping limbs out of the audience. I mean, really obviously fake limbs, right? And
Yeah.
then sewing them together. Evil nurses sewing them together, and then and then their lead singer suddenly is brought to life like a rock Frankenstein. Life at last. Salutations from the other side. I can tell that you're the devil's pride.
This sounds awesome. This
Oh, it's
like I don't know
incredible.
how this one has slipped under my radar.
Yeah, well, I mean, for a long time, it was very much a um, cult movie,
Yeah.
and back in the day, it being a cult movie was very different, right? Because we didn't even have video.
Yeah.
But then it was like, if you know about it, you hear about it, you go see it whenever it comes to a review theater or something like that. or you get the videotape, and then eventually, like 30 years later, there's like a sudden resurgence of interest, and people are
It's
like,
weird how things like that work. How
absolutely, yeah,
yeah, how something will get no play at all when I just watched another movie that I'd seen it years ago when it came out, and then John Paget actually did a write up about it for a recent release. Session 9.
yeah. Oh my
Yeah, I just watched
god,
that again. It was I remember liking it when I first, because I saw it like 2010, a year after it came out,
yeah,
thereabout, and I remember liking it a lot. But I definitely was not like
yeah,
mentally mature enough to really understand like the
yeah,
profundity of it and like what I was really watching. I liked it. It was like, ooh, creepy, abandoned asylum, but beyond that, I did not understand any of the themes, the subtext. Watching it now, 15 years later, however long, I was like, holy crap, this is like a truly great movie. And I looked, and in addition to John writing about it,
yeah,
there is an entire like
yeah.
subculture of Session 9 just die-hard fans.
Yeah, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, it's
I reviewed
incredible.
it when it came out. I remember bringing the guy who would eventually be my husband to see it, and we saw it in a theater with like two other people, another couple. And as we were
Yeah.
coming out, we were behind them, and the girl turned to the guy and said, "That is the worst film I've ever seen." And I was like, "You are a moron." But yeah, it's like I I always took a lot of, well, what I felt was a lot of crap from other not authors, from other critics
Hmm.
in Toronto for A, liking genre movies, but B, wanting particularly horror that was not satirical, that was not going, it's a horror movie.
Yeah,
And Session 9 is that.
for sure. Because it's very like like I don't know. I feel like if you maybe changed the score and like it would only take a very little bit of amending to make it essentially not even a horror movie.
Yeah, no, I mean,
But
it's
just
like,
the way that it is just terrifying.
yes,
And yeah, like I was very surprised that at just how much I had missed the first time around, and I get why there
th-
is this true passion and love for this film.
this blue collar psychodrama, you know,
Yeah,
it's very much an indie movie, which also involves hallucinations and ghosts,
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
possession. We don't know. It's like, but it is absolutely that feeling that I have often had, that it just takes a little crack and the
Hmm.
darkness seeps in, or
Yeah.
the darkness that's already there seeps out.
That's an awesome way of putting it.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna have to find some of your film reviews. I bet they're great.
Mm, some of them are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
Is
of them
there
are
one
bad.
in particular you can point to that you're like, what was I thinking?
No, no. I mean, the thing is that most of the reviews that I did were for a Toronto magazine called I Weekly, and I does not exist anymore. A and B, uh, everything about them has disappeared off the net. It was like
Oh,
they were they were one of the first indie magazines in Toronto to put their stuff up on the web,
oh, okay.
and then they took it off immediately, almost immediately after they folded. So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it's
They didn't want any traces left behind.
I don't know, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, you can find stuff that I've written here and there. I
I'm gonna have
think,
to look into that.
yeah. Uh,
um,
I'm
oh no,
also working on, in fits and starts. I'm working on this thing called Dark Comforts, which is kind of like a combination of autobiography and criticism
oh, okay.
about horror culture.
Yeah, interesting.
Sort of my dance macabre.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a very cool concept.
thank you.
Um, So when did you find that you had I guess a passion for film that was strong enough to make you pursue reviewing film as a career? Or
Uh,
I don't know if that's what you did as a career, or if it was. I mean, it sounds like it was.
it Okay, so both my parents are actors.
Oh,
So
okay, interesting.
from the beginning, I was around the film industry, the TV industry, and I guess you could say the drama industry.
Yeah.
My parents are working actors. They've done everything from commercials to my mom actually is touring right now, doing
Wow.
doing this sort of oh, it's a play called Doris and Ivy at the Home. It's about two older ladies in an assisted living facility. It's and it's just a one of those funny pieces
Yeah.
to show off the acting comedy chops of two older actresses,
Hmm.
and an older actor. um, and it's touring like these rural theaters in Ontario. And yeah, it's all been stuff like that. It's like my mom was in the Terry Fox story, the original one, as Terry Fox's mom. My dad was an expert witness in the that movie with Meryl Streep about how dingoes ate her baby. Um, you know, oh yeah, and he was on an Australian soap opera called Neighbours for like 3 years, which meant that he worked with people like, Guy Pearce when he was like a
Yeah.
teenager.
I'm actually familiar with Neighbors,
Yeah,
believe it or
exactly.
not.
Yeah, so it's all stuff like that. Or oh yeah, and Road to Avonlea. My mom was on that for 2 years. So they're working actors. So I knew the industry from kind of the back end, and better yet, because I had watched them be freelance workers, freelance arts workers for my entire life. I was sort of like, maybe I should get a job that pays consistently. So stupidly, I trained as a journalist. Um, yeah, it is hilarious to me that at one point in my life I was like, oh yeah, I could just
I
like
need a steady income and great
steady
job
job.
security.
Yeah,
Journalism.
exactly. Journalism. Okay, so went to university, got a BAA in magazine journalism, and graduated straight into a recession. Did not get a job in the industry. I spent like 2 years, I think, working in a sex shop, selling dildos and
You have,
vibrators.
you have a
Uh,
cool life.
Thank you.
That sounds awesome.
It didn't seem so great at the time, but yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
no, sure, yeah,
Also
that's
because
fair.
neurodiverse, so I have resting bitch face a lot of the time, and that's not such a great thing to have in a sex shop.
I can see that
Yeah,
being a bit of a hurdle to overcome as a shopper.
yeah, exactly. um, is this a good vibrator?
Anyway, yes, it's
Yeah, it's okay.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it depends what you want from it.
Is it true connection you're looking for, or just a good time?
Yeah. Yeah, also, I mean, now I understand this one looks like a totem pole, made of animals, but this has really good clit action. Anyways, so, it's about graduate into a recession, can't get a job in my industry. iWeekly suddenly pops out of nowhere, and my mom says to me, "So I noticed that this guy that you graduated with is writing for iWeekly. Why don't you do that?" And I said, "Yeah, he's reviewing rock shows. I don't know how to do that." She said, "No, why don't you review movies for iWeekly?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So I wrote them three 3 reviews, one of which was for Silence of the Lambs, and another of which was for Pumpkinhead, as I recall.
Nice.
And sent them in. Got an interview with the guy who was then the managing editor. He was like, "I can't, I already have film critics, but pitch me something else." I said, "It's AIDS Awareness Week coming up, and I work in a sex shop." Uh, and, and we kind of went from there. So I became a stringer, which is where you pitch them things, and if they're
Oh, okay.
interested, they pick them up. I would write about, like 3 to 5 articles a week, and you know, go with that. And they'd either pay me for them or they wouldn't. And then eventually, I drifted into actually being in the film department and being a film critic. And I did
Okay.
that for almost 9 years until
Huh.
eventually I was pushed out for being too old for their hot,
Really?
hip young magazine. Yes, I think so, yeah.
I mean, you got all these stories about sex shops and stuff. I mean, if you
Hmm.
wouldn't have told me the year you were born, how would I have known?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, uh, I really am at that point in my life where I'm like, on my Twitter, it says a preliminary sketch of a crone, because I, I
Yep.
every once in a while I'm sort of like, oh, I am old, and you are younger than me, and a lot of my life experience you do not have. I didn't have a computer until I was, yeah, I didn't have a computer until I went to university, and I didn't have the internet until I was 25. So,
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean,
because
like, so I believe, so like I just turned 35 last month,
oh wow,
and my fiance's sister she just turned 21, 21, 22, something like that.
yeah, yeah,
And even from where I'm at to where she is, there's a world of difference.
huge.
Like, and I think it's a little bit lessened considering, like, I would say from, I feel like when I say this, it sounds like negative connotation, but like your generation to mine, there's a bigger leap in like technological
Oh yeah,
event. Like, I mean, it went from computers taking up warehouses to being in your pocket, and phones in your pocket, laptops, just all
yeah,
that stuff. But then even from my generation to my soon-to-be sister-in-laws, it's like
living half
completely
your life,
different.
living half your life on the internet.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
weird
like,
kind of divide. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot, but every once in a
yeah,
while, I'm just sort of like, holy
yeah.
shit. There was a time, young man, where you just kept your thoughts in your head.
Yeah, right. And yeah, like everybody wasn't privy to everything you were doing all the time.
Yeah.
And like I fell into that trap for a few years where I was posting everything I was doing, taking a picture everywhere I went. And now, now that I'm actually picking up steam as a writer and I really should be using social media more, I just cannot bring myself to do it. I just
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
failing in that regard.
my mom was the first person to join Facebook that I knew, and to some degree, I'm still on Facebook because of her.
Hmm.
So she'll be like, "Can you post something, please? Can you just
Man, your
tell me
mom
what
has
you and
sound advice.
yeah, tell me what you and Cal are doing right now, okay? Because otherwise, I'm just you could be dead." It's like, no, I think you would find out if I was dead.
Oh man.
Hmm.
So to again kind of make a hard left turn
Let's.
to what is it so as both a viewer, like a consumer of the
Hmm.
medium, and then I guess also conversely as a professional who has worked in the medium, what is it about a horror film, or what makes a horror film effective?
For me,
Yeah.
okay. So there's a divide that you always have to deal with, in terms of film, which is that when you watch a film, anything on the screen has a kind of mm, almost well, it's almost like a hyper reality. It's like, well, there it is. So obviously that happened. you know?
Yeah.
So, but you're always also dealing, or at least I am, with, but does it seem real? Is it immersive? Is it, it's really interesting to me because, you watch a film like the original Suspiria, like
Mm-hmm.
Dario Argento's Suspiria, and the blood is like bright red.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yep.
and people are acting in ways that, you can't even explain by the fact that it was shot in a different language and then subbed, and then dubbed afterwards,
I
right,
was
in
gonna say, does
English.
dubbing change like the
Yeah,
color pitch?
yeah, exactly. And the colors are hyper intensive,
Mm-hmm.
and but there is a a hyper reality to that film, which I do find immersive. It is like dreaming somebody else's dream. And I've said that before, that, that watching a film is like dreaming somebody else's dream. I think I said that in experimental film. And that's what I love about film. It's like for a little while, you are inside of somebody else's consciousness. And again, you're split between the auteur theory of, are you inside the director's consciousness, or are you inside of this weird lurching machine that is, it's made of all these alchemical kind of components, like 300 people could have worked on this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them were doing completely different stuff, and a lot of them, it was just their job. Somebody said, do this, and they did it. And they did it really well because they were they were craftsmen of some type, a craftsperson of some type, but all of that came together to make this ride, to make this, this moment, this cascade of moments that you insert yourself inside, and it takes you from here to there, and it also sets off a cascade of reactions inside your brain. And out of those reactions, like half of the movie is what actually exists in the movie, and half of it is what you create by reacting to the movie.
It's a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody sees it like that, but I do, because there is a part of me that is all about analysis. It's all about pattern recognition. And there's a part of me which is also a garburator. And, it's like, oh, I like that. Don't like that, but I really like that. I could do something with that. so, so that's what I'm thinking when I'm seeing any movie. But I particularly love it if I am watching a horror movie and I'm feeling that. And so there are movies that I'm deeply in love with that other people just bounce off of hard, and there are movies that I know are kind of trash, but there are sections of them, or there are things in them which, it's like the difference between okay, two really dumbass movies that I've watched multiple times and enjoyed every time. One is The Lazarus Effect.
Oh yeah, with Mark Duplass.
Yes.
Yeah, and Olivia Wilde.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. One is The Lazarus Effect, which is particularly funny because that's the only fiction film that guy's ever done, and he never wanted to do another one because it was such a terrible.
It is a really bad movie.
Yeah, yeah, and it was such a
But
terrible experience for him too. But there's something about that film that I really,
yeah,
really
no,
like.
I've seen it multiple times myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And or The Cave also.
I know I've seen The Cave, but not
Yeah,
in quite
yeah.
some
It's
time.
The Cave is kind of like the, oh my god, it's kind of like the Scream era version of The Descent, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like a bunch of pretty people in a bad situation.
Yeah. That like I don't remember when it came. Was that like a 2006-ish
Yeah, I
movie?
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Lena
that
Headey's in it. That was one of the
really.
first things I ever saw Lena Headey in.
Okay, that I didn't know.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go back to it.
yeah,
I was surprised to see that Lena Headey was the wife in The Purge, the original Purge.
yeah.
I watched. I happened to catch it again somewhere. I don't remember where I was watching it, but I was like, "That is Cersei Lannister right there. Get out of here!"
That's
Like,
right.
I
Yeah.
literally didn't recognize her at first.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah.
She's such a great
Oh,
actor.
she's incredible.
She's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll watch Lena Headey in almost anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's like, and you're like, what the fuck is it that keeps me coming back to this film? Is it just, it reminds me of this particular folk horror aspect of there's a well to hell underneath this castle in Hungary. And oh, here it is. Here's the well to hell. And by which I mean there is a huge cave underneath it, and if you go down there, you may evolve into these things with wings and claws that are kind of like
Yeah.
demons. I mean, also it reminds me of Jeff Long's The Descent, which is a really amazing book.
Mm-hmm.
And I would kill for somebody to make like a mini series version of The Descent,
Yeah, like a
but that,
faithful.
yeah, exactly. But that doesn't
Yeah.
exist. So
Right.
instead you've got The Descent and the cave.
Yeah, someone could just marry those two together.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be sort of like half The Descent.
Yeah. The Descent, but not too deep.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Or Phantoms.
Ben Affleck?
Yeah, exactly.
Affleck was the bomb in Phantoms, yo.
Hey.
I don't know
But
if you know
Liev Schreiber
I
was
love Liev
the
Schreiber.
super bomb in
Yeah.
Phantoms.
Yes.
Hey, you want to see something really scary?
He's so good in everything. I've never not liked him.
I know.
Even as Sabretooth.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
an otherwise awful film.
Yeah, I know. It's like
he just knocks it out of the park every time.
Yeah, him. First run at Deadpool. And also, Hugh, who, is just really
Always
fucking
good.
Always good. always trying.
I'm so excited for Deadpool 3.
Yeah, so am I.
I mean, I will defend the MCU and whatever it's become until my dying breath. But
the whole thing that I find so funny about that is that everything that people complain about, I mean, aside from the corporatism, right? Which I understand. I understand that corporatism is awful.
Yeah, and it's certainly present. It is.
Yeah, and it's absolutely present. But everything that people complain about, oh, why are there so many characters? Why is everything just gets bigger and bigger, and there more and more people, and I'm like comics.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happens in comics.
It drives me crazy.
Holy shit, man.
Seriously, they are just following the blueprint. Is all they're doing.
Yeah,
and people love it in comics, and I think it's just become like the cool thing to hate on the MCU at this point. Like
shit real hard, exactly. From a height.
Yeah, like I'm too cool to like that, like mainstream stuff. Like
and the idea that that's mainstream, the idea that that's motherfucker, when I was a kid, that was not mainstream. It was not mainstream.
Like one thing that I kind of don't like, which happened as a result of, I mean, the MCU is the most successful film franchise of all time, at least from like a monetary perspective.
Basically, yes.
Like I kind of don't like how as a result of that, everything tries to be a connected cinematic universe.
Yes.
Like it doesn't need to be.
No, it totally doesn't need to be. I mean, and that's one of the things that I love about, historically love about horror. It's like I think I said at one point, the great part about horror is that it's the only genre where you can kill everybody, and people are perfectly fine with it. But
that's true,
so okay, so let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Something like When Darkness Lurks,
Hmm.
and Terrified, you know, where you're just like, what the fuck is that? You know, it's like somebody just decides, I'm just going to scare you. I'm going to make you want to die for like 2 hours.
I love that being like the express, like I love that being the pitch at like a film studio. They're like, sir, what's your idea? Like, I just want to make you die for 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and for it not to be, you know, the intersection of gore and porno streets, which most people think is where horror lives, particularly
Yeah.
cinematically. You know,
Uh-huh.
I remember when I was a kid saying to, well, you know, I'm 20, saying to people, you know, to I would like to write screenplays. What would you like to write about? I'd like to write horror films. And back then it was like, oh, what, like Friday the 13th? And I'd say, no, like Hellraiser. And nobody would know the difference. Nobody understood.
Right, yeah, like on the surface, those two are, six of one,
Well,
but
yeah, exactly. You know, because
only on the surface.
only on the surface.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because that's where it was. Yeah, always my leaning has been towards Cronenberg. My leaning has been towards, towards Clive Barker.
Hmm.
My leaning has been towards Peter Straub. You know, I mean, I love Uncle Stevie like everybody else. You know, but there's something about Straub where he digs deeper and darker,
Yeah.
and and has the same kind of character building, if not the same kind of world building.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like read Floating Dragon and it at the same time, and you sort of see what happens when they play in each other's sandboxes,
Yeah,
and
for
it's
sure.
really kind of interesting because Stephen King kind of can't help himself. It takes a while for him to get to revival.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you
It's my
know,
favorite Stephen King book.
absolutely. But it
Yeah.
takes him a real while to get there,
Yeah.
and even with it, it's sort of like, and then it was awful, but it got better, and then it was
Yeah,
awful, but then it got better,
for sure.
awful, better. Whereas Straub is kind of the other way around with
Yeah.
Floating Dragon. It's like it got better and then awful.
So much
So
worse.
much worse. You will not go forward.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Um,
so that's so I love both ends of the spectrum of horror. And if you tell me you're gonna show me a horror movie, I'm with you like 50% at the beginning, which I
yeah.
know is not everybody's. There's also something about the immersive quality of horror which has to do with sound.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so one time I was on a field trip with my high school, and we went to Nantucket and, and stayed at a motel where they had video, but it was scrambled, so you couldn't actually watch porn or whatever, or the movie channel, but you could kind of see it in little bursts. So, and you could hear it, and
Been
so
there.
yeah, so we turned on the TV, and it was The Shining.
Oh, nice.
That's a really
Ish.
bad way to watch The Shining.
I can imagine
That's a
the
really bad way to
audio
watch The
in that
Shining,
film
which
is
is just the
pumping.
soundtrack and tiny bursts of, like almost like freeze frames
Yeah.
of clear image, and then
With any
scrambled
luck,
again.
you're gonna get the woman in the bathtub.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the blood coming out of the.
Yep. Yep.
It's like, what's that guy doing with that other guy? What? Oh my god!
Yep.
And we were just riveted, and because again, 90% of it is what you're making up in your head
Mm-hmm.
because of what you're hearing.
Yeah.
And I gotta say that when people say, "Oh, I can't watch horror," I'm sort of like, try watching it with the sound off.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because not only not only does it sort of make you complicit with it because you're just constantly going, okay, so what's happening now? Who's that
Yeah.
guy? Where's he going? But also, when you remove the immersive quality of sound, and it's sort of like you're not at the mercy of it anymore.
Yeah.
You're not constantly being keyed up like, what around there, what are you telling me, is there somebody in that corner?
Yeah.
Oh
And
my god,
especially
it's his mom, she's going across the ceiling.
and especially if you have like surround sound and it's like tailored to you hear a footstep. If the character hears a footstep to the right,
Yeah,
so do you, kind of thing. Like,
the last time that happened to me, and because COVID, and
mm,
also I have a kid, I haven't been to a movie theater for a really long time. Uh, Certainly not consistently. I really want to go see Longlegs just
yes,
before
me
I
too.
leave for Spain, but which is this Sunday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but the last time was The First Omen,
Oh okay.
and that was really good to see in a movie theater
Yeah.
for that very reason.
Yeah. Oh, I
Because it
wish I
was
would.
like somebody was like whispering in your ear.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love it when theaters really add to the experience. Um, Dune was a good one for that, or Dune 2, I should say, was a really
Yes,
good one for the audio, really getting the full experience of the audio in a way that you just can't anywhere else.
I agree.
I've watched the movie probably 7 times at home,
Yeah.
and nothing will compare to the very first time I saw it in the theater. 'Cause I saw it like 3 times, I think 4 times in the theater, and it was unbelievable, unlike anything I've ever experienced.
There's that Scorsesean kind of the church of cinema, you know,
Hmm.
that kind of idea. And yeah, I feel like I feel like we're drifting away from that, and that's really annoying to me and
Yeah,
sad
yeah,
because that quality of seeing a movie on a big screen with a bunch of people who are not behaving like assholes. But even if they're behaving like assholes, it's like
yeah.
fuck it.
That can be fun. I guess it really depends on the movie. My
Okay,
best.
one time I went to see Annabelle in the theater, and there was this girl behind me who kept screaming every time something would almost happen. She'd be like, "Oh fuck! Oh fuck! What now? Oh my god! Don't show me that!"
That drives me
and
crazy.
and eventually, some guy got so pissed off at her that he turned around and he was like, "Shut the fuck up, bitch!" And then her boyfriend started fighting him.
Man, like if I was her boyfriend, I'd have been like, "Thank you."
Yeah, please.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't say it. I'll get in trouble. So thank you. But yeah, like that would I've had the remake, or I guess not. It's not really a remake, but the feature film of Fantasy Island.
Yeah.
We went, my fiance, my then girlfriend, and I
Yeah.
went to see that, and there was a woman there who brought like 6 or 7 children, all under the age of 8, I'd say. And when they were getting scared, she was literally like hitting them and like
Whoa, oh my
screaming. It was a
god.
whole thing. And she was like, that one of them would like start crying. She'd be like, "Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up!
Oh
Or I beat
my
your ass!
lord.
You think I care? There's people in here. Shut the fuck up!" And I'm like, "Oh my!" Like this, it felt like I was like getting punked. Like,
Yeah, it's like, lady, what
and
is wrong with you?
yeah, and then when
A, because you brought them, and B, because you're pissed off that they're scared and they're
at a horror
ruining
movie,
your experience.
yeah, and like
Okay.
it was
Um,
It was really
when
bizarre though because she would, whenever people did speak up, because a couple people did, including myself, and
mm,
before she was eventually kicked out.
yeah, good.
But her response to everybody was to, and pardon my language here, she would tell everyone to suck her pussy. That was
Really?
her word, and she just glommed onto that. She must have
Suck
said
it.
it, no lie, 100 times, and just
And again,
repeatedly
in front of these
to
kids.
everyone. Yeah, it was
That's
nuts.
that's amazing.
It
That's
was the
incredible.
worst theater going experience I've had.
Worst theater going experience I ever had was I was at a screening of Strange Days, and I was there to review it, and there were three guys in front of me who continually heckled Juliette Lewis because they just didn't like her, and I guess they thought that if they did it loud enough and long enough, she would leave. She would go, "Oh, sorry, Rafe. These dudes don't like me. I gotta go." And I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And
Yeah,
yeah, and okay, so I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Can you please stop doing that? This is not interactive." You
yeah.
know? and and this guy, one of them turned around and said, "Oh, interactive. That's a big word." I'm like,
Aw, it's cute you think that.
it's cute you think that, yes. It's like, yeah, I'm like, take some take some responsibility for the way that you for the
Yeah,
effect you have on other people. He's like, responsibility. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? And afterwards he tried to fight me in the lobby.
real class act this one, it sounds like. Oh
He was
man,
about, 20 and I was about 35. So I don't know.
that's I mean, yeah, like how are these people let outside?
I don't
Like, who
know.
lets these people off their leashes?
Who? I don't know. Anyway, okay, so yeah, it's like I'm with you half 50% when you show me a horror movie. But if you can hook me with you can hook me with really any kind of where you're working on me, but I'm also kind of complicit with you,
Hmm.
then you will have me 100%.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Well, we are actually over an hour already, but I do have one last question that I
Please,
want to
yeah,
ask you, and we're gonna
absolutely.
have to do this again because I actually do have a lot more that we actually didn't even get to
You
today,
know,
which I like.
I can keep talking. I'm fine.
I have a little while longer. I do have an
Okay,
appointment I have to
sorry
get
about
to,
that.
so
Yeah.
I'm the one ruining it. I
Okay, no
apologize.
problem. Yeah.
I am curious to know what is the scariest film you have ever seen
Oh my god. Um
and
all
why?
right. Okay. All right. A film that I own but have not watched since the first time I saw it past a certain point is The Rapture by Michael Tolkien. Um
Okay.
and so that was from I believe 1990 or 1993. Stars Mimi Rogers. And it basically plays out the idea uh, that the that okay, so Mimi Rogers is a woman who is extremely um, drifting and atheistic and dissociated with her life. And one night she has a dream about a pearl, um, just kind of rotating in space, and she comes to work and realizes that other people have had the same dream, and this leads her to change her life. She converts, she becomes a hardcore Christian, and she gets married and she has a kid, and then she receives another dream and decides to go off to the desert with her child to wait for the rapture. And the rapture does not come at that point. And yeah, her kid dies of dehydration. Then she gets then she gets arrested and ends up in jail. and that's when the rapture happens.
Oh,
And yeah. And she's left in this place where it's like eventually she's standing outside literally the gates of heaven, and her daughter comes out and is like, "Mom, all you have to do is forgive God and you can come inside." And she's like, "I can't." And her daughter says, "But you're going to have to stay out here forever." And she's like, "Yes."
oh man, that that's some heavy stuff.
I know. And part of it is that I, I grew up in the Satanic Panic era, chick tracts.
Yeah,
I'm not religious. My parents aren't religious. I was, and religion was presented to me in a lot of ways as just another form of mythology. Um, and, so like Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and Christian mythology. But there's something about the soul, the idea of the soul, that transmits itself very, very clearly to you at a very early age. And I'm not even sure how that happened. But, and the idea of eternity,
oh, that
the bird sharpening its beak on the glass mountain. And when it's completely worn away, that's the first second of your life in hell.
that is, I kid you not. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. That is my biggest fear
Mm,
ever. Like,
yeah,
and I can't even see second place. The idea of eternity literally keeps me up some nights,
absolutely. And I think
and
everybody
it
everybody feels
it's
that way. I mean, anybody who has
yeah,
any sense of cosmicism, you know, um,
yeah,
any sense of entropy, any sense of how fucking huge things are, and how, you know, the space between every tiny little atom is nothing,
yeah.
and that nothing goes on forever. So yeah.
There's a short story or novella, whatever it is, by this guy Stephen L. Peck, I think his name is. It's called A Short Stay in Hell,
Oh,
and it is the best literary representation of that vastness of time, and no matter how many trillions of eons, like beyond the possibility of actually giving it a number, is still that much compared to how long you're still going to be there.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it's
And that I remember that moment, when, again, when I was like 10, 10 or yeah, 10 and a half. And that was a bad year because, I went through puberty, and grew to full height. It's like
yeah,
sudden, sudden boobs, sudden everything.
yeah,
Suddenly everyone is reacting to you like you're a full grown woman, and you're not. And,
yeah.
but that was also the year that I realized that I was going to die. And
Mm-hmm.
everyone I knew was going to die. And that's bad enough. But then what? But then what? Then what? You know,
Mm-hmm.
we all rotate around a, a hole, and nobody knows what's in the hole, but we all know we're going in. And that mystery, and yet that terror, is to me the numinous heart of not just horror, but everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's why you need to be kind to each other. That's why you need to do things that are useful and not useful. That's why
Yeah.
and it's fascinating to me, particularly within the context of evangelicals, um, that they're so convinced that it's like, yeah, oh, it doesn't matter what happens here.
Mhm. Yeah, right. Just apologize for it and you're good.
No, not even
Oh
that. I
no, that's
mean,
not evangelical, I don't think.
yeah,
Or
that's
maybe it
that's the
is.
weird part. I mean, it's like, yeah, Catholicism, it's like my
Yeah.
husband's a Catholic, and a lot of the time I'm sort of like, why don't you take advantage of that, man? You can like literally go to a priest and
Yeah.
and go, I think I fucked up. and, and the priest will be like, yes, my son, you did fuck up. But, do this, and this, and think about it.
And consider that slate wiped, my boy.
Consider that slate wiped. But yeah, but just that, that weird kind of focus where you're constantly thinking about where you're gonna be after.
Hmm.
And instead of where you are right now, where people are starving and dying, and you
Yeah.
taking people's rights away. And I don't know.
Yeah. It took me it took a lot of therapy
Hmm.
to get me to, like, I guess, live more in the moment instead of constantly worrying about something A, I have no controller of, no
Exactly.
control over, or B, that, with any luck, won't be an issue for quite some time yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, but still, it's always lurking there in the back of my mind. I have gotten better
Yeah.
about it. It doesn't keep me up at night quite as much, but
Exactly. I mean, and I remember my mom saying to me, I don't feel that you were really an adult until you had a kid," and which is, it sounds so gender essentialist, but I do actually feel that it that having Cal made me the best that I could be, like so much better of a
yeah.
person, because I'm just not thinking about myself all the time anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
I imagine that there's almost an, like, inherent maturity that comes to being a parent, which is not to say that
well,
every parent is
you'd
mature.
hope, you'd
Yeah,
hope,
but
but
any responsible parent, any person, with integrity, I guess, is going to hopefully at least do their best to rise to that occasion.
that's,
So
yeah,
I like to think I would. I mean, I can't say for certain, but I like to think I
yeah. I
would.
mean, but I mean, the other great thing is that if you're worrying about somebody else, you're not going to worry about yourself as much. You're not
That's
gonna,
a
I
really
can't
good
say that
point.
you won't do it at all,
Yeah.
because I've had some moments, especially over like the first half of this year,
Yeah.
where I spent some time in bed. Yeah, just sort of going, oh, what? Oh my, what? you
Yeah.
know,
What now?
what now? But
Yeah.
but in the immediate, it is very much, I have a person, a now full grown man. He's almost 20, with special needs, you know, who I have to show up for. I have to be
Yeah.
present for. I have to, you know, it's like, dude, get out of bed, get out of bed and make some food, you know, and write a horror story.
Yeah. Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it just fascinates me how somehow we moved from, the from Puritanism to, this weird place where it's like, ah, fuck you, fuck you and fuck your kids, and and fuck everybody else,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, I'm all right, Jack, and if you're not all right, fuck you.
It's weird. Yeah, it is weird, like, how we've gotten there considering our origin story, I guess.
I know.
That's a weird way to put it, but yeah. No, it is pretty bizarre
Yeah.
how that's all come to pass. But anyway, sorry.
Oh,
I,
we've gone all over the place.
we have, and I'm serious. I would really like to do this with you again because there is plenty more
Well,
to talk
I would
about.
absolutely love to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah, when I come back from Spain, yeah, I'm leaving on Sunday, and I'll be back a week from then.
Okay.
And yeah, I would love to
Yeah, we'll
talk to you
definitely
again.
get something on the books. If somebody wants to find you, find your work online, where can they do that?
Okay, so everything I have is up at the horrible Amazon. Um, all my older stuff is available through Open Road Media. And And my most recent collections are either from Trepidatio or of course, Grimscribe, the wonderful John Paget. The most recent is Blood from the Air. So yeah, in That Endlessness are and Dark is Better, which is a pretty good um, overview of like the last 20 years, I'd say, of my fiction, and Blood from the Air would be a good place to start. Experimental film is the novel that I would recommend to most people, although I've written five basically. And I am working on some new stuff.
Nice.
You can find me on Twitter, uh, um, at GemmaFiles. I usually show up as weird menace and excessive bloodletting, I think.
Yeah.
I also doodle doodle horrible creatures and creepy looking ladies.
I love it.
Thank you.
Do you create like backstories for them?
Yes. A lot of the time I
Nice.
do create backstories for them. Oh, and Jesus Christ, I'm an idiot. Okay, so there is a Kickstarter, I think, right now, for an anthology called Experimental Files, put together by a lady named Sarah Walker, which is stories
Like a tribute
based. Yeah,
anthology
it's
to
like a
you?
tribute anthology.
Oh,
It's
that's
insane.
awesome.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I've been in stuff like that for like Thomas Ligotti and
Yeah.
you know
Ligotti, Laird Barron,
yeah,
Ramsey
most of
Campbell.
my Lovecraftian stuff, I guess, could
Yeah.
fall into that category. But yeah,
That's
it's a
so
great
cool.
yeah, it's a crazy idea. Yeah. We haven't even talked about my love for found footage and
Yeah. You have a love for found footage? That is my
huge.
favorite. Okay, we're doing a part two to this episode
Yeah,
ASAP. Yes,
yeah,
I
found
I am
footage
a
and
sucker for
cursed
found
films.
footage. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait to talk to you
Yeah.
again. Yeah, I'm a sucker for found footage. Like I get that it is more misses than hits, but
Mm-hmm.
I love all of them. All
Yeah.
of them have redeeming qualities to me. Even the worst Amazon Prime 1-star rated found
Yeah.
footage horror movie.
Yeah. It's like, show me that thing.
Yes,
Show
exactly.
me.
I want it. I want it. Give me more.
Later, their footage was found. Show me that footage. Thank you.
Yes. Gemma, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I promise we are going to talk again soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
You too.